Hi, everyone. On today's episode, we have Brian Mohr, the CEO and co founder of Anthem, joining us for a conversation about the new frontier and working from home. If your organization is planning on having that distributed workforce going into 2021, this is an episode you want to tune in for. Brian, thanks so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure, Lindsay. Good to see you.
Our A to Z BizLink community is already fairly familiar with you because you recently spoke at one of our events. However, I'm sure there are members of our community and within the A to Z BizLink network that are unfamiliar with you yet. So would you mind just doing a little background overview as far as who you are and where you work and what you do?
Happy to do that. I'll start with the most important things first. I am an incredibly lucky father, a proud husband, a music enthusiast, and a passionate conscious capitalist. I've spent the last 20 years of my career, I guess what you would call the people space, maybe formerly known as human resources or human capital, which just isn't a term I love all that much. So the people space, and I've done that in a variety of different places. Was with jobbing.com for 11 years, talent acquisition at PF Chang's, and then have been sort of, I guess, developing my entrepreneurial muscle over the last 10 years or so, with a good 7 of those as a co-founder of a purpose-based executive search firm called Y Scouts. And then earlier this year, launched a business called Anthem, which I'm super, super excited about. So long and short of it, I've been spending time in the people part of the business and feel called to continue to do that.
You know, we were initially introduced because we were both doing so much work in the workforce space, like helping companies figure out what they can do to attract and retain top talent. You are certainly one of those local gurus, and everybody, I feel like whenever we have one of these conversations, there people are like, "Oh, do you know Brian Mohr?" So glad we were able to finally connect the dots and to continue to work on different projects together. But you had mentioned Anthem, which is one of your new projects and initiatives. Would you mind just sharing a little bit more? Because I think this business model is just so fascinating.
Yeah, thanks. It's at its core, it's an employee connection platform. I think, we find ourselves in really interesting territory. 2020 has brought all kinds of disruptive challenges to the world at large, and the business world has not been free from being impacted by those. And because we are, and frankly, were prior to the pandemic, accelerating towards this work from home or work from anywhere reality, I think we find ourselves in a place where all of those serendipitous office collisions that many of us took for granted and having with our teammates, before meetings, after meetings, in the hallway, in the break room, grabbing coffee, grabbing lunch, so much of that right now has unfortunately been put on hold. And yet the needs we have as human beings to feel connected, to feel that we are a part of something and belong to a group, those are still there. And Anthem is really there to help bridge some of that gap that exists right now, and does so in a way that leverages the power of personal storytelling. And as our introductory module, we're using music as a connection bridge to help members of a team connect with and catalog the really important moments from their life, throughout their life, that have really shaped who they are and how they view the world. And then as they catalog those moments, choose a song that is symbolic of those moments, and then use that combination of story and music as a way to connect with the folks that you work with day in, day out, to really build that deeper level of trust, that level of vulnerability, that level of connection. The business case for why building great relationships in the workplace and the impact that it has on the overall productivity and output is just irrefutable. So just because we can't be together in person at the same level of frequency and consistency that we once were, doesn't mean that we can't at least figure out how to fill that gap. And that's what Anthem's here to do right now. And I'm just really excited about it. It's a ton of fun.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, before COVID, I think there was a great opportunity for a platform like Anthem, but now even more so as we're all as business leaders trying to figure out what can we do to keep our team united and still collaborating and working together. I just think it's awesome. And for those listening, now you know why I thought Brian would be the perfect guest to have on as we're talking about working from home, a distributed workforce, and what we can continue to do to, thrive as leaders and run successful organizations as our team members are in this new normal of working remote. So I'd love to spend some time here just talking about what you're seeing in that space as it relates to a distributed workforce. What trends are you seeing? What are you hearing from local leaders?
Well, I think if I sort of rewind back to when this disruption really started to accelerate back in March time frame. I think everybody was a bit shell shocked, and I think you immediately saw, or at least some of the things I saw, were executives and leaders who were very opposed to not having all of their team in the same place, same building, really quickly have to sort of like just adapt to the reality we're living in. And there are a number of well-known organizations who have kind of taken it a step further and have made some pretty major announcements that they are going to continue this sort of an environment, work from home, work from anywhere, for the foreseeable future, if not like indefinitely. And so I think a lot of folks who believed, and I think old habits hard to break as they are, believe that you all needed to be in the same place in order to deliver the best product, the best service. I think people are starting to change their tune, and so some of the ripple effects that come from that. I'm fortunate. My wife works for a pretty well-known tech company, and on a pretty regular basis, they're trying to provide the resources that every member of the team needs, regardless of where they sit in the organization, with the tools that they need to create the most optimal home offices possible. So I'm seeing stuff like that, and that's just a firsthand experience. But I know, my wife's experience is not unique just to her company. I think this is happening all over the board. And the other piece that I think is really interesting, and I've been thinking a lot about this lately, the amount of time that all of us used to spend waking up, getting ready, showering, eating breakfast, and then jumping in the car and making that commute, whether it was 20 minutes or an hour to get to work. We've got all this extra time, although it may not seem like it, and I get it. But what are we doing with all of that time and some of that opposition to the work from home mentality that was out there? I think people are starting to recognize that, wow, I can actually get more done because I've benefited by having an hour, two, maybe even 3 hours more in the day that I can dedicate, whether it be to work or really taking care of my own mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical health. So I think there's just a lot of benefits coming from it. So that's, I feel like I might be getting slightly off topic, but
No.
I just think we're heading into a really interesting uncharted territory, and I'm seeing a lot of positives come from it. Notwithstanding, I do still think we're wired for connection. And at some point, I hope we are together in person with our teammates in the foreseeable future, but time will tell.
I would have to agree. Another big trend that we're seeing is a focus on overall health and well-being, because we do have a little bit more time, but then also COVID has, forced us to think about, what healthy activities are we doing? What are we doing to fuel our bodies? So on an organizational level, leadership now has to look at the whole human experience. What's happening at home is coming to work, and what's happening, in their personal lives, vice versa. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
so through that, we're trying to really focus as leaders on how can we set our team members up for success. And, we can provide them the tools that they need. We can give them, I've heard of examples being, we give them a gift card so that way they can go and buy the technology or the desk setups that they need. Of course, that helps. But are there any other things that you think would really go a long way? What else can leaders be thinking about or doing that can ultimately provide an even better experience for their employees or their workforce?
I mean, so I'm a little biased, so that'll seep its way into my response to the question. But I believe that leadership, and everyone that has the honor and privilege to be in a leadership capacity, that their responsibility for signing up to be in a leadership role is it's their role to help every member of the team, or the individuals that they have the honor and privilege to lead, to help them be the best that those people can be. And some of that's absolutely going to revolve around helping them develop, of course, in their profession, whatever their career happens to be, the role that they play on the team. But now, because I think there's been just this unbelievable blending of work and life. I mean, we're essentially, now we live at work, right? Many of us live at work because we're doing it from our homes. That leaders are starting to recognize that, all right, in addition to when I'm having my one-on-ones with my team around the business outcomes, I also need to be tuning into all of those other aspects, the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual health. And that's a new frontier. And so I think the leaders that are beginning to dive into that, whether it's encouraging mindfulness, whether it's encouraging whatever level of fitness that they can do, whether it's carving out time during those check-in meetings to talk about non-business related stuff and really help the individuals, again, that the leaders have the opportunity to lead, to help them reach all of their goals in life, not just the professional ones. Because I think the more we as leaders invest in helping our teams fulfill all of their dreams and goals, the more productive they're going to be in the work related stuff. So I think there's just, this notion, and Lindsay, we've talked about this before, this work-life balance thing is just such it's an interesting, and in my opinion, a bit of a tired dichotomy. It's just life. And what we do, 75% of our lives are spent working. So what we do for that work shouldn't have to be separated from the rest of our existence. It should be additive. It should be something that drives meaning and satisfaction. And I think leaders are really tuning into that. And it's about time, and yet old habits die hard.
One important element to that would be just keeping open lines of communication between leadership as well as different staff members. And I think organizations have started to excel and get more comfortable with figuring out strategies to stay in front of different team members. However, one component that has also, kind of risen to the forefront is the idea of building trust within your organization. How important it is for your team members to trust the leaders and the leaders to trust the team members. I mean, especially as we're working from home. So, would love to pick your brain on that specific topic about building trust within organizations. Any great strategies or tips you have about that?
Well, I mean, I think trust is one of those things so I think there's really two schools of thoughts around trust, right? You are either somebody that gives it and like, I will give it to you first and then it's yours to lose. And then there are other people, and neither's right, neither's wrong. We're like, you know what? You're going to have to earn my trust, and whatever their mechanism is or the ways in which someone can earn their trust, they sort of play the wait and see approach. I'm not here to say which one is right or wrong because they're both very viable options. I fall into the former, which is, when I have joined an organization or I'm a member of a team, I'm going to give my trust. And then it's up to those individuals, over time, if they're going to continue to make me believe that I made the right decision, awesome. And if they give me reasons to believe that I haven't, then it is what it is. And then that trust will be broken over time. So I think, regardless of which school of thought you come from, the way to build or strengthen trust, I think, comes from really showing a sense of care, a sense of investing in time spent with the members of the team. And I think that can come from working on projects together and delivering on an outcome, like working together and building trust through working on a project that the team is working on. Or it can also just come through those, again, serendipitous moments where, whether you're connecting in person or you're doing it through video, where you're really giving your undivided full presence and attention to the person that you're connecting with, right? Really listening and showing that sense of compassion and curiosity, sense of empathy, and just really tuning into who they are, what's happening with them. I come from a spirit that relationships are the foundation of all accomplishment. And so the more we invest in relationships, I think the more that level of trust, whether you're a trust giver automatically or a trust earner over time, the deeper the relationship, the more trust emerges from those relationships. And so there isn't a fast way to do it. I think it just requires investment on both sides to continue to develop that. So obviously having much of our communication happening through video for a lot of folks right now, I think throws up a new roadblock that we haven't had. But I think the same level of being deliberate to get better at a skill, whatever that skill might be for our job, that same focus should be applied to developing relationships with our teammates. It requires an intention and a deliberateness to do that. And so carving out time to do those things, I think, is super important.
I think a lot of leaders, they automatically default and go to, oh, well, I need to set up another meeting. Maybe I'll set up a meeting with each one of my team members and we'll have individual one-on-ones on a weekly basis. Now, I mean, based on other conversations I've had with other leaders, having more meetings doesn't necessarily lead to stronger relationships. So aside from setting up those one-on-ones, is there any other tips or strategies that you would recommend that people consider in order to build those relationships and trust with team members?
I mean, it's hard for me not to just want to jump in and talk about the experience that we've designed, our virtual experience through Anthem. But I think, so many teams would reserve some portion of a monthly budget. A team leader would have a budget to do the escape rooms and the happy hours and things like that. And that's really important stuff. As much as some of us might roll our eyes from like, oh, we're going to go do bowling again or whatever, there's value from being able to be together as a team doing something that is not necessarily related to the job at hand. And so, you know getting the team together to have experiences, whether it's a Zoom happy hour or having each member of the team maybe on some sort of a rotating basis, do a tour of their house if they're comfortable doing that, or sharing a favorite family heirloom and telling a story. I think there's so many things you can do. Of course, the Anthem platform helps facilitate something like this using storytelling and music to do it. I think there's a number of different ways that you can do that, but it's how do you do it without scheduling a meeting? I guess if you are all physically distributed, you do need to schedule something. If not calling it a meeting helps participation, awesome. But I think carving out time to really bring the members of a team together around an activity, whatever it might be, I think it's really important right now, and probably needs to be done more often than what we might normally think as we're adjusting to this new reality.
I couldn't agree more. I think actually the frequency probably does need to increase for 2021. A lot of business organizations are putting together their budgets for the new year and they're trying to think through their strategies and what that looks like. And I would encourage people to not get disturbed or cancel everything on their calendar because of COVID, even if we are working remotely and if we can't be face to face with a lot of our team members or traveling to different offices. Let's find opportunities to still connect. And there are still a lot of really wonderful, platforms, Anthem being one of them. I know that there's a number of other organizations and companies out there too that can provide those experiences, and businesses are getting creative.
Big
Um,
time.
one that I liked, which I can share with anybody that's interested. There was a template for a Jeopardy game, and so with Alec Trebek passing away this year, I felt like, oh gosh, this was a perfect time to actually launch this one. And I didn't realize what a hit it would be, but everybody had so much fun with it. And we had prizes, of course, at the very end. So, it doesn't have to be a super expensive experience. But I think, just by doing something, it shows that you care and that you're invested in building those relationships.
100%, 100%. I think another really interesting reality that we're about to race into, given the time of year that we're in, is holiday parties, right? I mean, so many organizations would, the team members would so look forward to the year-end holiday party. You rent out a hotel ballroom, or you go to a private room at a restaurant. You bring your life partner, spouse, significant other, your plus one. And it's just a great opportunity to connect. Well, I'm going to go on a limb and guess a lot of that isn't going to happen. So what are organizations going to do to fill that void? Because we work so hard all year, and then to not have an opportunity to celebrate in the holiday spirit, I think is, it's a missed opportunity if we don't get to do that. So finding creative ways to still create connection, to bring not only the employee, but his or her, somebody important in their life, whoever that happens to be. We need that support from our partners in life, right? Where we work and how we talk about it, and the people that we get support from outside the office, friends and family. I mean, that stuff matters a lot. And I think we probably don't pay as much attention to how much that second voice adds to the cultures of our organization. It's just super important.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I love that idea of bringing in people's spouses and the rest of their family, especially now, because as we're sitting in Zoom meetings, little ones are running in on the camera screen and waving to everybody, and there's background noise, and it's just our new reality. So that is a great idea. Um,
And you bring up a great point, Lindsay, right there. Like, I mean, think about how many or the level of access that we now have to our teammates' lives, right? We've met their kids, we've met their pets, we've seen their decor, we see what they look like in a baseball cap. We see, do they keep their house or apartment or condo? Is it clean? Is it dirty? Like, we just have the door to humanity in the workplace got kicked open unintentionally, but here we are. Like, why close it now? Like, we've gotten to see our teammates in a way that most of us never have. Why would we shut that off? Like, I think like the barriers, the defenses, the egos, oh, I need to be somebody more professional than who. I'm not saying let's throw the rules of decorum out the window, but why would we shut the door to humanity when it's been opened? Here we are, and let's just keep going through it. And I think a lot of really good can come from this. So I'm just excited about where we're headed.
Absolutely. I am as well. The one thing that stands out to me is that there's no playbook. There's nothing that tells us exactly the best way to handle this moving forward and what exactly we should be doing. However, I think there are a lot of great tools and resources and probably some books and blogs that may provide some great insight as far as overall leadership, best practices. And so I know you love to focus in on this space and you do a lot of work on your own, but are there any books or anything that stands out to you that you would encourage our listeners to look into?
I mean, God, that's a huge question. I mean, lately there's an author, his name is Nir Eyal, Nir as his first name, his last name, Eyal. He has a blog called Near and Far, Nir and Far, so kind of a play on words of his first name. He wrote a book called Indistractable and just did a follow-up book called Hooked. And I just love the spirit of where he's coming from. So I would imagine quite a few of the listeners are familiar with Nir and his work. He's got a really good blog. I tune into Chip Conley a lot and his wisdom well. Chip Conley, the former CEO, founder of Joie de Vivre hotel brand. He was an advisor with the Airbnb guys for a number of years and then launched the Modern Elder Academy. I was thinking of the acronym MEA, the Modern Elder Academy. And maybe it's because I'm fitting into that age range nowadays, but it's like so many folks who are reaching that, 50-year mark in life and beyond are beginning to question, what do I want the rest of my life to be? Is it about accumulation? Is it about legacy? And so Chip is constantly putting out content that I think is really thought-provoking. Particularly for folks that have had a few laps around the track. And then third and final, I love Adam Grant and everything that he stands for, author of Give and Take and the Originals. He's a Wharton professor. Love following what he's up to. And just he's constantly sort of perturbing the space around just challenging the status quo, whether it's a philosophical mindset or like hardened practices in business. He's putting out something on a very regular basis. And those are just a handful of folks. I get a lot of support and thought-provoking content through Conscious Capitalism as well. That's a thriving community that continues to grow, that really wants to celebrate the power of capitalism, but also not lose sight of what next level of practice of business can we take this to? How do we begin to move away from shareholder short-term only to stakeholder long-term? And I find that to be just a wonderful community that I get a lot of inspiration from as well. So that's just a handful of thoughts that bubbled up based on that question. I could probably talk about that with you for the next 4 hours.
Yeah, a lot of great ideas there. I know I personally, over the holiday season, I love to, snuggle up with the blanket and read a great book. So I think you provided some great ones to look into for a lot of our listeners. So Brian, as we look to wrap up our time together, is there anything else that you would love to leave our audience with? I know we could continue this conversation for hours, but is there anything standing out to you?
I would double down on that sort of door of humanity being opened. And I think as technologies just continues to penetrate every part of the human experience, and the workplace is certainly not immune to the technological advances, and we should embrace the heck out of it. But I think what's going to continue to happen is as technology begins to help us do more with less, and frankly, continue to replace a lot of the routine functions in business, that the way to separate what humans are capable of is leaning into those human skills, those proverbial soft skills that are the most difficult to develop because it takes a lifetime to develop. And leaders out there who might be slow to adapt to the reality that culture matters, developing your people matters, leaning into those soft skills like empathy and curiosity and critical thinking and just all of that human stuff, the stuff that separates us from our machines. I think that's where we need to be investing so much of our time. And so, came as a result of a horrible pandemic. Well, here we are. So regardless of how we got here, I think we all have this wonderful opportunity to lean into this and begin creating better outcomes for everybody involved in business. And I'm just excited about it. So that'd be my sort of final soapbox rant.
Brian, I know you have helped a number of individuals in different businesses throughout the business community, but who do you feel like you can help the most moving forward in 2021?
Wow, that's a great question. Um, I will answer that and say that the leaders out there who are just so intensely focused on creating amazing cultures, who want to continue to invest in that because they believe in their heart and their soul and in their mind that creating that is the only sustainable competitive advantage. For those leaders out there that care so deeply about culture, those are the folks that I want to align with, that I want to be able to help to really double down on much of what we've been talking about today, whether that's through the Anthem platform or in other ways. Those are the folks that I'd like to help.
I know many of those individuals in our A to Z BizLink community are those people. So if they want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get in contact?
My email is pretty simple, Brian at Anthym, and Anthem is spelled Anthrym, Brian at anthym.life, Life, Brian at anthym.life. That's probably the easiest, or LinkedIn too, obviously.
Wonderful. Well, Brian, thanks again for being here today.
It was a real pleasure, Lindsay. I always love chatting with you.